Hello everyone, welcome back to Chess the James Way, and this is part 2 of the Idaho Open, and we're going to be looking at the last game that I played, and this is round 5. So basically, what's happening is if I win this game, then I win the entire tournament. If I draw, then I split first place with like 5 people, and if I lose, then I'm fried, and I don't get anything. So let's jump right into the game. I'm playing one of my friends. I've played him a couple times. He usually the two main times that he's played me in like a long format, which is like an hour 30 minutes per side, he's won both of them, so that's kind of concerning. But I was black in both of those games, and now I'm white. So we'll see if that makes a difference. The game goes e4, and he plays this opening. And okay, there are a few options. I can go e5, and then we get into this position where white has a big center, but if black knows what they're doing, they can usually have a decent position. But what I decided to do is play knight c3 because I knew that my opponent wouldn't really know this line as well. And also, I'm used to playing this line after, this is what I used to do against this variation of the Scandinavian defense, where I would go here, and then we would transpose into this same position. So the game goes like this. We get knight b6, and now my opponent plays kind of a suspicious move, and that allows me to threaten a scholar's mate with queen to f3. And the point of this move isn't to actually take the pawn, but it's to force my opponent to play e6, and now my opponent kind of just made like 2 pawn moves. Bishop's kind of blocked, and this kind of just forces black to kind of have an awkward pawn structure, because black would either want to play e6 or g6, but probably not both. So now I play d4, which is kind of aggressive. The whole point is that if black really wants to take, then they're going to have to deal with a bunch of development, while black's pieces are all on the back rank. So my opponent decides not to take. We get castles, and now c6. And if you look at our pieces, my pieces are kind of active, and my opponent is kind of struggling to get their pieces out right away. So I go ahead and go h4, trying to attack the king side. We get a5, attacking on the other side. And I play a4, just blocking. And there's nothing really wrong with a4, but apparently I could have just went for h5 immediately. But it wasn't so clear to me after a4 that I could actually get like a big enough attack. But apparently the computer says that after this, and queen h3, I have really nice pressure. And it makes sense because these pieces aren't getting into the game. But I didn't really see a need to do this, so I just played a4 instead. So we get h6 by my opponent. A good move. If my opponent plays h5 instead, then I can attack it with g4, which would be bad. But because of h6, now if I play h5, black can play g5. And this is still pretty decent for white because I can play queen to g3 and then follow it up with f4. And this was an idea, but actually forgot that I didn't really realize that I could like move the queen to the side and then play f4. So I probably should have went for this instead. But in the game, I decided to go for bishop f4 and try to trade the dark squared bishops, because my logic was that if black doesn't have the bishop in front of the king, it's going to be harder to defend if I can like cover the dark squares with my pawns somehow. So we get knight d5, centralizing the knight. I do go forward with this bishop trade. And eventually, I start pushing my pawns on the queen side. So if you look at the position, my bishop is a little bit better, and my pieces are slightly more active. But if black can consolidate, then he'll probably be okay. So we get a couple of trades. Now we get f5. So I kind of understand this move because it looks like black kind of has to do something, or else I'll just improve my position too much. But this probably isn't the right time exactly. I think black can still play some improving moves like queen c7, trying to trade queens like this. But f5 is a good try to complicate the position, which is what happens in the game. We get queen d6, trying to trade. I go back to stop the trade, but really, I don't really have to, like, I don't have to do that. If I just like cover the open file, then even if black does get the trade, I can move my rook all the way into the 7th rank, and then move my other rook in as well. And now I have a lot of pressure on the e file. But in the game, I decided to keep the queens on the board. My opponent plays f4, which is a nice move to make room for the bishop. I play rook g1, which is slightly inaccurate, but my idea was just to play for this cheese, like knight takes g6, and then, for example, if rook d8, then I would take on g6, and then play h5. But this is just a cheese, and my opponent just steps to the side. So I kind of just wasted a move, unfortunately. But okay, I go c3. Now my idea is to trade this bishop off to put more pressure on the g6 pawn, which is what happens in the game. I go takes, takes, and then I go h5, g5, and now the king is kind of exposed in this diagonal, so I try to take advantage of it with queen to d3. Now, at first glance, this is a mistake because it looks like I'm hanging a pawn like this because the d pawn is pinned. However, if if my opponent were to go for this, I wouldn't take the queen, I would go to rook e1. And my whole idea is that I can remove the defender like this, take king h8, and then I would just take this pawn. And I would just be up a pawn, I guess. But my opponent can just like play rook d5, and there's definitely enough compensation for the pawn. But I just figured that like my opponent wouldn't really want to go down a pawn because he's also trying to win. Because we have the same score. But yeah, I just didn't think my opponent would want to take. And instead, my opponent plays like kind of a bad move. Queen to f6. It doesn't really do anything, which is just the main problem. And also walks into this knight g4 attack. So I take advantage with rook to e1. Now, a big threat is knight to g. If my opponent does nothing, I have knight to g4. And now this queen is overloaded. So once it moves away, I can sack the rook, and then force the queen to stop defending the rook, and I would win basically a free knight, because rook and knight minus rook equals +1 knight. So my opponent has to kind of untangle like this. I attack the queen, goes back, rook e5, now my pieces are all coming in. And here I spend a lot of time, relatively, spent like maybe like a third of my remaining time, so I went from like 25 minutes to 17 or something like that. I don't really remember, but the moves I was looking at were c4, rook e1, and queen to e4. And ultimately I decided on rook to e1, but the best move here is actually queen e4 because of a lot of reasons that we'll look into. But okay, I went rook e1, which is the most logical at first. King g7 is forced because I'm trying to go to e6 and then take the pawns. And I do go here, but the problem is this pawn's kind of hanging. So the reason queen e4 is better is because I can leave the rook to protect this pawn, and that's kind of feels kind of weird, like a 5-point rook is protecting a 1-point pawn, but this pawn is so important that it's actually worth it. So queen to e4, and then like my opponent kind of has to do the same thing because I'm still threatening to go queen to e7. And notice that the rook can't move, the queen can't move, the rook can't move because this rook is just being attacked. So king g7 would still be necessary, and then rook e6. And now there's no queen takes h5 anymore, and I can just take over here, and then I would have this really, really strong passed pawn that this rook is already behind. So that's this rook's purpose. It doesn't need to be over here because it just wants to be supporting this attack, even though it's not exactly an open file. So I didn't really realize this, unfortunately, I played rook e1 instead, which is still pretty good, but it's just not as good. So in this position now, I have to go back to rook g1 to protect the knight. I can also play f3, but the main thing is I have to protect this knight so that I can take this pawn safely. Now my opponent kind of goes, tries to like complicate the game a lot, which is a good idea. Basically, he can't stop me from taking this pawn, so I might as well like do something, because if I take, then I get the open h file, and then I have a lot of pressure on his king. Okay, so the game goes like this. Now we're both getting into time trouble. He has like about a minute, and I have about 5. So it's about to get really, really crazy. There's only a 5-second delay, so that's kind of a substantial time situation, like scramble. So I stepped to the side because my opponent was threatening knight to e2, knight g6. We got queen h3. Now I play this nice move, knight to e3, attacking the rook. So the point is, if my opponent takes, then I take with check, and then I recapture the rook and I win the rook. So instead my opponent checks me first, I move to the side, takes, and now the blunder that now I make the massive blunder that you saw in the thumbnail. Pause the video to see if you can find my blunder, and if you found knight g4, then congratulations. And if you didn't, then try to figure out why it's a blunder, because it's not very obvious at first if you're thinking immediately. And both me and my opponent missed this. He actually has queen e1 check, sack the rook, and then queen to d2, which is a fork on the king and the rook. And now I would have to go like king b3. And now this is a disaster because I'm not up a pawn anymore. And my king's kind of weak, so it would be very, very difficult for me to win this game. No. But luckily for me, my opponent missed it. So he played here instead, and I went on to just win like this. So hooray! So my first tournament after about 14 months, and I did actually manage to win, which is very, very nice. Some of you were asking when my next upload is going to be, and I'll just see you in the next video.